So I've been doing a lot of international media lately. Right before I was on, headed over here to the studio, I was on the news over in Lebanon. Earlier today, I was on the news in Dubai talking about the affirmative action cases here in the States. And there's a case that going on in Europe right now that really got my attention. Because in Europe right now, in France, there was a young man who was shot by police. And this young individual, he's on screen right there, Nahel, he was shot and killed by police. And France is currently undergoing their own George Floyd moment. Throughout this week, we've seen this snowball into riots, into destruction. Buildings have been burned. President Macron has not been able to establish order. And the reason being because this young man is part of the massive immigrant community there in France who have been consistently alienated, who have been consistently neglected, who have been consistently treated the same way there as we treat migrants here in the United States of America. One of the issues that we have as the Pan-African community is understanding that our problems here in the United States of America are not unique to us. They're very much part of an international wave of anti-blackness. If you look at what's going on in Italy with Giorgia Meloni, the prime minister there, becoming a neo-fascist, saying she misses the days of Mussolini, and even saying that they specifically do not want African immigrants coming to France or coming to Italy. They'd rather have immigrants from Venezuela because they share Latin roots. You can look at Viktor Orban in Hungary. You can look at Lukashenko in Belarus. All of these countries are dealing with these issues of African migrants who are coming to Europe not because they just love Europe, but because Europe has raped and pillaged Africa for the last 5 centuries. You stole all the food. You stole all the luxury items. You stole the people and enslaved them. So these folks are just coming to where the resources are at. We just saw the migrant boat in Greece capsize. While the news media was searching after that damn submarine, we're talking about 700 people were in that boat that capsized. So these riots in France are really a buildup of that anger, of that feeling of displacement these individuals have. The same way that George Floyd wasn't just about George Floyd in America. These riots in France aren't just about this individualized shooting. And I think it's important for us to understand that we want the whole world to focus in on our issues here and to unite against white supremacy here. We have to be equal partners in ensuring that we're fighting against white supremacy international. Because if you're looking at everything going on from the Conservative Party in Great Britain instituting voter suppression that they learned from the GOP here in America, to anti-immigrant forces in Eastern Europe building fences and barbed wire to keep African and Middle Eastern migrants out, even our good friends in Ukraine who were expelling African migrants prior to the invasion, or what's going on in Israel where black African Jewish migrants from Ethiopia are treated as second-class citizens in their own homeland. If we're not going to pay attention to the international white supremacist community in their fight for anti-blackness, no one is going to pay attention to what we're doing here in America. Michael, I want to bring you in on this. What do you think it will take to reestablish order in France, or do you think Macron is actually up to the job?
Well, you know, I've been following this of course, I've been following the Supreme Court decisions more, but I have been seeing stories about this, and this is, you've had the third night of these riots, rebellions taking place. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to take, but it's going to, France is a colonizing country. Whether we talk about Haiti, whether we talk about African nations. So I think it's going to take some real truth-telling, some real honesty about the oppression of African migrants and migrants from other countries coming into France. You know, so I've been reading about this story here. It's a 17-year-old young man, if I remember correctly. They just give his first name, Nahel, N-A-H-E-L. And this is, I think these protests may spread around the world once again, like the George Floyd protests spread around the world as well. So we could have another wave of, social justice movements also. So we'll have to see what happens here. But there's going to have to be some real truth-telling that takes place in France.
And Matt, to that same point, part of the issue that I think people have is the fact that we very rarely see anything come out of these protests. That here in America, we had the George Floyd summer in 2020. We are yet to pass federal legislation to address police brutality here in the United States of America. We were able to pass $1.5 trillion for the Inflation Reduction Act, $1.7 trillion for the infrastructure bill, $3.5 trillion for the omnibus spending bill. We were able to pass the American Rescue Plan. We were able to pass $4 trillion in the debt ceiling deal. We were able to pass the Stop Asian Hate bill. We were able to pass the Respect for Marriage Act. All of these in a quote-unquote divided House of Representatives and a divided Congress. You even had Marjorie Taylor Greene supporting the president on the debt ceiling deal, but we've seen absolutely no movement, absolutely no action on police reform in the United States of America. And similarly in France, we've seen absolutely no movement on actually addressing the issues of migrants there. What do you think has to happen to move these white supremacist power structures, both here and abroad, towards actual action?
What did Pac say? They don't give a fuck about us, right? I mean, what did Macron say? He said, I don't believe there's systemic racism in policing. And I think to get right down to it, it's the idea of truth-telling, which I think you just mentioned in terms of how to remedy this issue in France. They have to be truthful about, one, the disparity that is experienced by migrants and immigrants there in France. And also, they have to remember this. France is the perfect example of how they have to make the smart move to remedy this, because first, if you're looking at the French Revolution, it really wasn't that long ago that, the entire country was reshaped because of revolution. But just a couple months ago, the French people essentially revolted over the lowering of the retirement age, right? So France is a place where the people really take it to the government if they're not happy about what's going on. And I say that to say, I think Macron and his people would be smart here to get together with the people who have the biggest megaphones and who have the ability to move the ball to say, what do you need meaningfully? Because I don't think France is a place where they'll let it die. And I think it is obviously an outcropping of what we're seeing here. And, to Michael's point about this spreading across the world, I know the George Floyd protest did. And I don't know that young Nahel will necessarily have the same, mushroom effect because George Floyd was so recent, relatively speaking. But outside of that, France would really be remiss if they didn't take this as an opportunity to meaningfully listen to its citizens. Because if not, I think there's a good chance that there will be more. I think 900 people have already been arrested. There will be violence and there will be loss of property and loss of, hopefully not, but loss of life. So I think what they need to do is listen to the people there to say, how do we improve the conditions? Because the same conditions are at play there that are at play here. It's people saying, we are tired of being the bottom caste. In fact, one of the quotes that I read was someone who said, we are not scum. We don't like violence either. We are French, just like you. And until they give them that inclusion and that route there too, then you're going to have this continued issue.